Meteorologist Chris Haddings here. Weather's going to be fairly quiet over the next few days, just a nice warm up and dry conditions. So thought I'd highlight some of the big astronomy events that will be coming up over the next few months or so. Especially now that it's going to be fairly warm when you go outside at night. You're not going to freeze your butt off when you go out there. So 3 of them. First one I'm going to highlight, number 3, it's going to be Jupiter in opposition. Going to occur fairly late in the summer, around August 19th. Now, in opposition of a planet, all it is basically 3 objects in a straight line. Earth, the Sun, and also the planet. Now imagine in opposition, the Sun will be behind me, I'm the Earth, I don't look like the Earth, but the Earth, and then the Jupiter will be up in here. Now what this does, it aligns the orbits fairly well, so the planet will be visible all night. It will rise when the sun sets, and it'll start to set below the horizon as the sun begins to come up in the morning. Now the best time to view this will be in the early morning. Now the moon will set in opposition sometime around 1 or 2 o'clock in the evening, so at night I should say. So if you can get up really early or stay up really late, that'll be the best time to see it. Now it's very visible to the naked eye. You can see it really easily. With the binoculars, even a decent camera, you may be able to see some of the 4 largest moons. Now there's 53 moons around it. A lot of them are just a mile wide, so you won't be able to see those. But the 4 moons, if they're properly lined, you should be able to see those if it's clear enough. And also, if you want to see details though, you're going to need a telescope for that. If you want to see, say, the storm on the southern part of the hemisphere. How do you view it? Well, it's going to rise in the east-southeast sky shortly after sunset, then transverse the sky and set in the west as we get towards sunrise. They can distinguish this from the stars because when you look at stars, usually they twinkle, and if it's not twinkling, that'll be Jupiter. Now, you can see some pictures I took of this. Now, I have a pretty decent camera, but even with the camera, you can't really see a lot of detail with this. This is a 350 millimeter lens I have right here. That's a pretty good lens there. So unless you have a zoom lens, you're not really going to see a lot of detail. Now you take a look at this, you can see the jagged edges around, especially here, and you can see in this one as well. The reason why this happens is because these are gas giants. They're composed largely of hydrogen and helium. You actually see the gases around it. And the conditions are right, and the orbits of the moons are right. You actually see the 4 moons of Jupiter. These are the names that are right here: Castillo, Io, Europa, as well as Ganymede. And we move on to the number 2 event. This will also occur in August, a little earlier though, around the middle of the month. This happens every year. It's the Perseid meteor shower. Now the meteor shower comes from the tail of the comet. It's called the Swift-Tuttle comet. You can't see the comet, but you can see the debris that comes from the tail. Now it's called the Perseid meteor shower because it's a constellation that it originates from. It's called Perseid. Seems like common sense, doesn't it? And also it's generally the best meteor shower of the year, with over 100 meteors an hour at times. Now it's going to depend on how dark it is and if there's any cloud cover, but you want to see meteors, this is usually the best one to watch. Now it's a clear sky out there. This will be a good time to watch it. Remember last year we had the meteor shower, but there was also a pretty bright moon out there. It was out there all night and it was close to full, so it blocked a lot of them. The difference is now there'll be a waning crescent. I think it's only going to be about 15%. It'll also be setting fairly early in the evening when it peaks, say around 10 or 11 o'clock in the evening. So it's going to be rather dark at night, so we have clear skies. It should be a pretty good show. Now the event will be visible anytime from late July through mid-August, but the peak will be on the 11th as well as the 12th. Now how do you view it? First place you want to do is find a place where there's very little light pollution. Now this is Wyoming, it shouldn't be too hard to find a place like that. So just get away from a lot of the towns. And when you get out there, it takes a while for your eyes to adjust to the darkness, so give yourself about 30 minutes when you look up in the sky. Now look toward the north-northeast, that's where the Perseid constellation is going to be. That's where most of them are going to appear, but they could originate from pretty much anywhere, but that's the best place to look. Now the best time to view it, as I said, after 11 p.m., after the moon sets, but the highest radiant point is actually going to be before dawn, say that time of year between about 4 and 5 o'clock, before we start getting twilight. You see a couple of pictures I took. This was last year. There's a very brief time when you can take it. You see one meteor here, as well as one right there. Now the number 1 event I think is going to be this total lunar eclipse we're going to have. This will occur fairly early in the season, right before the Memorial Day weekend on May 26th. Now some details on this. Now a lunar eclipse occurs when the Earth is in very close alignment between the Sun and the Moon. We're in the middle, Moon's over here again, Sun's behind me. It only occurs during a full moon, and that's why these things are so rare. You only get a couple of these a year. Now they're very safe to look at with the naked eye. Sure you remember those of you were around about 4 years ago when we had the total solar eclipse. You need welding glasses or a pair of these to look at the sun. I can't see! I can't see! That's from watching too many British comedies. These are perfectly safe to look at with your naked eye, so don't worry about that. Now, a full moon is something that's called a blood moon. It's because it appears with kind of a reddish color out there. It has to do with light waves getting refracted off the sun. There's a lot of science. I'm not going to get into detail on it. Look it up if you're interested. And this is the first one we've had in about 2.5 years. Now, a few years ago, we had a cycle where we had about 4 in a year and a half. This will be the first one in about 2.5 years, so we've been waiting a while for this. So how do you view it? You have to get up early or stay up really late for this. The partial eclipse will begin around 3:45 a.m. That's when you start seeing the moon disappear. The preumbral will begin about an hour and a half before that. Now you got to look low on the western horizon. The moon's going to be fairly low in the sky when this starts, especially as you head toward totality. It's going to get really low in the sky. And I believe I looked online. It's about 3 or 4 degrees above the horizon when it reaches totality. That'll be right around 5:10. And this won't be a long total eclipse, only about 10 or 15 minutes for the most part. And it may not appear as red as other eclipses. You know, if we're getting toward the solstice, it is going to start getting light. The sun won't be up, but we will have some twilight in the sky when it reaches totality, so it might not be as red as some of the other ones, but it should still have a reddish color to it. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see it come back out of it, since as we head toward right after totality, it'll be below the horizon. And these are some pictures I took of the last eclipse we had. You can see when it starts going down about halfway, 3/4, and it reaches totality. You can see that reddish appearance there. There's a few events I wanted to highlight if you want to go out and look at the sky over the next few months. So happy stargazing. Enjoy your weekend.